as we look at the life of who seems to be an insignificant character in the story that unfolds before us. We pray that you would allow not only our imaginations, but the very life that we live to connect with the life of Hagar, an Egyptian maid servant, so lonely, so despondent, so hopeless, yet in the midst of her present darkness, the lumens of your incredible grace have come and conquered what needs to be redeemed. This is our story, this is our song. We pray, speak to us now. In Christ's name, amen. I know of a lot of girls, babies that are born, and the mothers choose the name Sarah, which is a lovely name. I still have to note of a daughter, or a baby girl, who was named Hagar. It's a very unusual Egyptian name, but I get it. It's not only insignificant, but she is a maid servant. But then, when I look at her life, I begin to wonder, wow, this is some life. This is some beautiful life. Hagar. You know, last week we talked about the call of Abraham and the difficulty of that call. God calling him to take the first step, and then God merely saying, all I need is for you to take the first step. Don't focus on the details. I'll show you later what you need to do. And there was a wrestling, of course. But then we find Abram, the father of faith, stepping out and saying, yes, Lord, I'll obey your call. By the way, he was 75. We are on chapter 16, and that was chapter 12. And so we're skipping a few chapters. We'll go back to those chapters later. But what transpired immediately after Abram's yes to the Lord's call is something that seems like so familiar. That when a person says yes to God, it seems to be an ironic happening. It's the moment he stepped out in faith, crisis upon crisis began to unfold. You know, when I look at my life and when I said yes to the call of God, I would take a good half day to share it with you, which I won't. There was non-stop of sudden deludes of crisis, like you're wondering, Lord, did I not say yes to you? I just said yes to you. What's happening in my life? But suddenly the clouds are constantly dark. And why did you allow this tragedy? I just said yes to you. But we find that in the story of Abraham, because the moment he said yes, stepped out there and began his journey with his family, we are told that there was a great famine and they're used to comfort. back in Ur. But now there's a great famine. Suddenly, the basic necessity of food was nowhere to be found. And so Abraham, I didn't find any prayer there. Immediately he turned to, I've got to flex my muscles here. I need to look for provision. And so he went to Egypt, took his family to Egypt without consultation from God. But there was a problem in Egypt. It's well known in the cultural world that the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, had a predisposition towards beautiful women. And he's already a lot, but he keeps on adding to the harem. And Abraham knows that. And Abraham's wife, Sarah, we take it, has form and beauty. And so he foresees this, being a wise man. He foresees this, and he thinks, if I'm going to migrate to Egypt and settle there for food, there's a chance, a big possibility that I'm going to get killed. Because this is how Egyptians work. They look at a woman, and if the woman is married, then they'll just dispose of the husband, and the wife becomes one of the wives of the Pharaoh. So sensing that that was going to happen, Abraham, thinking that it was wise, without consultation from God again, he talks to Sarai, and he goes, my darling, you know, you're my beloved, but you know, I don't want to die young. You know, they're going to get you, they're going to kill me. We're going to Egypt, we don't have anything to eat. And so, can you please help me in this? Let's pretend that you're my sister. And that was the arrangement. It was a silly plan, but apparently that was the only plan that they had, and Sarah agreed, and of course they found out about the couple. They saw the lovely Sarai, and immediately Sarai was extracted from Abraham and added to the harem. And Abraham had food, but they're separated. But then pestilence was happening in Pharaoh's household, and God spoke. And later Pharaoh learned that Sarai is actually a married woman to Abraham. And so he met with Abraham, the Pharaoh, and said, what in the world were you thinking, Abraham? Why did you tell me that this woman is your sister? She's your wife. Now all these kinds of troubles are happening in my household. Take her with you, and take whatever possessions you've gotten here in Egypt, maid servants or slaves that you've gotten. Go, just go, get out of Egypt, because I don't want any of those troubles in my kingdom. Get out. That's your background. And so here we find Abraham again, no longer famished. The famine is over. He has possessions, servants, men and women servants. And now we have here the story. What I'm trying to expose here is when God calls you, it's not a guarantee that's going to be smooth sailing all the way from now hence when you say yes to God. As a matter of fact, that inverse may well be the case. When you say yes to God, there's going to be unusual happenings in your life. Did that happen to you? Yeah. You just said yes to God, and suddenly there's a curveball. I kid you not, this is very personal to me. Because when I said yes to the Lord, the worst tragedies in my life took place, one after the other. And I was not able to figure what in the world was happening. One thing I know, I was just trying to be faithful and obedient to God. But there was a deluge of ironic challenges So I get this. This is too personal for me. But we enter the story and we look at what we might learn from the vantage point of a very unusual personality. And I'd like for you to enter the pathos, the emotional condition of a foreign immigrant. Her name? Hagar. Now, did I tell you that when Abraham was in Egypt, that he was able to indulge in business, and as a result of that, he was able to provide some food and possessions. And he was told by the Egyptian Pharaoh to go and, okay, take your possessions with you and servants with you. One of those servants was Hagar. Now, the category is maid servant. In the ancient Near East, there is a provision for the wife to be given the legal right to possess. Remember, they are looked at as possessions. To possess a woman assistant. And most women assistants are teenagers. The range is 13 to 17. Scholars are looking at sweet 16 here. She's 16 at the very prime of childbearing potential. So you have an Egyptian teenager who was living comfortably with her Egyptian family, and because of the powers that are structured in Egypt, you cannot say no when the Pharaoh picks you up from your family. She gets extracted from the simplicity of her Egyptian family. How's that for a teenager? She gets extracted and she's told, you will be sold. And so she's sold to a foreigner, to Abraham. And then things changed. She had to be moved away from Egypt. At least in Egypt, she has familiarity with the surroundings, but now things change. She's now to go with Abraham and Mrs. Sarah. I'd like for you to enter her world because she's only 15, 16, gets uprooted from her family, integrated into the pool of servants, sold to Abraham, assigned as the maid servant of a foreign woman, and now moved away from the country of origin and is now part of Abraham's household. And get this, the narrative goes, Abraham and Sarai does not once mention her name. If you're Filipino, you get this, because I get this all the time. In the Philippines, we go by I have a name, man. Especially if you're from North America. Filipino, that's okay. You're used to that. But when we migrate to the US and we come back to the Philippines, and our relatives, especially the older ones, they call us I have a name. That is so insulting. But did you know this? Hagar, she has a name, but she's not even called that. That's how lowly. And this is so sad. But can you imagine the isolation and the sadness of this teenage girl? I'd like you to feel that for a second. If you were in her place, and that's her state. And we are told now Sarai, let's go back to Sarah and you'll see Hagar here. Abram's wife had borne him no children. That's how the story begins. Sarah, Abram's wife, still had no children. Okay, I'd like you to look at point number 1 here. please put on point number 1. This thing that we are so good at as humans, manipulation, is the word. The very first sentence in chapter 16 goes by this, that through the years, Sarai, who was told by Abraham that God spoke and that she'll have a baby, it's been more or less a decade had elapsed and there is no baby. And the author of the book in chapter 16 is emphasizing and highlighting the difficulty of what seems to be the habit of God. You know what the habit of God is? He tells you something and then it does not happen quickly. Have you claimed a promise from God? It's been 10 years. For some, 10 months is like forever. And you say, Pastor, it's been 10 months, my goodness. This is more than 10 years. Abraham was told by, Sarah was told by Abraham that you told me that God will provide the baby. Where's the baby, man? I'm well along in years. There is no baby. And that's the context. And Sarai had no child, but we are told, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. There she goes. And there is a cultural thing that's legal back in their world, that if you have a maidservant, you can actually use the maidservant as your assistant to produce an offspring. And that is legally your child. The ancient Near East. This is not to say that God approves of that, because you will see that there is no prayer here. We are told that Sarai had an Egyptian slave, Hagar, and so she said to Abram, listen to what she said, "The Lord has kept me from having children." Did you see that? Did you hear that? That Sarai declared, this is ironic, because Sarai is saying, you know, God has kept me from being pregnant. Isn't that ironic that God said that they will have a baby, and now she turns around and says, you know why I'm not yet with the baby? Because God's the one who's stopping it. Doesn't make any sense, right? But let's follow the flow. But be easy on Sarah. It's not easy to wait for 10 years, people. I wonder what's going to happen if, Maribit, if Ronnie promises you something that is so important to you, and 10 years has elapsed and it's not happened yet. Not going to be a happy day, right? So I get it. Let's be easy on Sarah. But at the same time, let's follow what's going on. Because this is actually our story in here. The Lord has kept me from having children, she said. And look what she tells her husband. Go sleep with my slave, and perhaps I can build a family through her. You know what that's called? Synergy. I'm going to help God, because he's not really capable. So, my dear, I give you total permission to enter her tent and do as you please. But I need a baby. No prayer, just good old-fashioned manipulation. I need to say this gently to the spouses, as gentle as I can, without sounding obnoxious. Wives, be careful what you tell us, because we really take you seriously. If you tell us that we are brilliant and that we are such wonderful creatures, we really begin camping on that thought. And we get so inspired. When you tell us otherwise, either innuendos or direct shots, we go down deep. We start losing it and we feel like dorks. And we remain there. You tell us to do something because we care for you and we love you. We go for it. So when you tell us, go have sex with my assistant, we won't think twice. We won't even pray because she just said it. Abraham agreed to what Sarah said. There was no fight. Abraham just said, of course, my dear. How old was Abraham? 85, correction. How old was baby Hagar? 16. Not a good match. But he went anyway. I'd like you to feel, if you were Hagar, what would you feel? You got extracted from your original family. You got sold. You got extracted from your village. You got, and now you're in a caravan. They're not even calling you by name. And suddenly, there is this old man who's pulling your blanket and says, it's baby time. Enter the world of Hagar. That's brutal. That's brutal. Enter that world and everything falls apart. And so he slept with Hagar, and here's what happened. And she could see. And when she knew she was pregnant, point number 2, you know this word here, that slide number 2, please. I have this condition, myopia, the condition, the eye condition, where I can't quite see what's far if I don't wear these contacts. I can only see from here, like 2 or 3 inches at the most clear. And so if I remove my contacts, you are all blurs. I won't be able to distinguish who you are. When you indulge in manipulation, you know what's going to happen? You will imbibe myopia. Everything that you see is only 2 inches around you. 2 or 3 inches, that's all. That's all that matters. What's around me, 2 or 3 inches. You're so oblivious to the people around you, to what's important out there. You are simply obsessed with self-preservation, as though you can preserve yourself. The delusion is so near-sighted. And this is what happened. When Hagar knew that she was pregnant, she was 16, so lonely, so despondent, she began to despise her mistress. I ask you a question, if you were Hagar, would you do likewise? You have no choice. It's just a default emotional reaction, I would think. No woman that age would act otherwise. And so she was so distressed. And so she began to despise Sarah. Then Sarah, listened to her word, said to Abraham, myopia, people, myopia. Abraham, you are responsible for the wrong that I'm suffering. What? I put my slave in your arms, and now that you know she's pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge you. May the Lord judge between you and me. Now, doesn't that sound almost like comically silly? I said, excuse me, Sarai. Abraham's to be blamed. Whose plan was this anyway? Did you just forget that? But hey, what did we say? You turn to manipulation, you acquire myopia. And so, it's everyone else's fault. Except you. That's the curse of manipulation. You subscribe to manipulation, you've got to cover all your bases. You got to cover all your bases. There is no other option. Manipulation gives birth to myopia. And let's see how Abraham deals with this. You might expect him, hold on. Let me talk sense to you now. Let's pray first. No, we don't find that. Instead, Abraham said, your slave is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think is best. And so, Sarah mistreated Hagar. What? The silence of Adam. When a man remains passive, when he's supposed to lead and he resorts to passivity. And what do we find here? If you're Hagar, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay or are you going to flee? I guess survival instinct 101. I am pregnant. I don't have mom and dad here. There are crazy people here. My goodness. They don't even call me by name. There's no hope here. I'll flee. So she ran. You will probably do that yourself. And so she fled. We flee a lot, don't we? Do you recall an instance in your life where you were a Hagar? And so many stuff are happening and you don't know what to do. And just the default was this. I don't care where I'm headed, but one thing I know, I'm out of here. And off you went. And you found your place in a very dark desert place. At least you were out from the battlefield. But it was a very dark, isolated place. Have you been there? And is that the end of it? Like when you are in that situation where everything seems to be so gloomy and dark, is that the place where God says, it's done, it's over, that's it? We'd like to think that that's the end, but interestingly, that is where we discover a massive reality. Third slide. We discover an ocean called grace. There's a song that goes, if grace is an ocean, we'd all be drowning right now. Because grace is an ocean. We do not deserve it. There is no darkness that has any number on grace, because grace is quick to swallow up everything that's dark. That is the thing that astounds me to this day. I've been in dark places in my life. Very lonely, despondent places. But the stubborn grace of God has kept pursuing me. And so, the angel of the Lord, by the way, the angel of the Lord, a lot of scholars debate on who this angel of the Lord is. Some say that's the Son of God incarnate. Well, probably not, because there is no reference about this in the New Testament. But we know that whenever the angel of the Lord speaks in the New Testament, it's always Gabriel. So I take it, big possibility, this is Gabriel. The angel of the Lord found Hagar where? Near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to shore. Now we are sure where she's going. She's going back to Egypt. That's your clue. So it's an important thing in Bible study, you get the points. And so, metaphorically, Egypt has always been the antithesis of the promised land. If the blessings are towards the promised land, the curses are towards the opposite place. Nothing bad about Egypt, but it's just a metaphorical divide. And so what we're being presented here is because of the despondency and because of the craziness of what's happening in Abraham's dysfunctional family, Hagar, with no sense of hope, thinks that the best alternative now is to stay away from the promised family, from the family of Yahweh, because they're so dysfunctional, and head back to Egypt where there are no gods. At least there are many gods. But God has a plan for Hagar, it seems, and for the rest of us. And instead of allowing Hagar to totally go back to Egypt and lose God, God sends an angel, Gabriel, and he holds the process of deportation. And so the angel speaks, and this is the most beautiful thing. I was just camping on this sentence for a long time because I couldn't believe that this was what happened. Remember, Hagar never heard her name because her name was never mentioned in the household of Abraham and Sarai because she was just a piece of property. She was called. But this is so delightful. You know why? Because Gabriel comes, sent by God, and the very first word that comes out from the angel is her name. How's this? She hears it, and the angel opens his mouth, and he says, Hagar. Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from? Where are you going? You see those two critical questions? Where have you come from and where are you going? Do you assume that the angel doesn't know where he came from and where he is headed? I don't think so. In the same manner that when Adam sinned and Adam and Eve sinned, in the same manner that God showed up and he asked the question, where are you guys? You think God doesn't know where they are? I don't think so. This is the very thing that when there was a murder in Cain and Abel, that God began asking the question, where is your brother? Do you think God didn't know that there was murder? I don't think so. So why is God asking the question, where did you come from and where are you headed? I think that God is up to something. He's not asking because he doesn't know, but he's asking because he wants for you to go down the road of reflection and get the entire story in and not just a bit of what's happening to you right now. Because people, we are so myopic. And that is the reason why we miss the magnanimity of the grace that's oceanic in our lives. You know, we miss it. You know why? Because we pay attention to the current bites that are happening in our lives. My goodness, I have sugar bites here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Sugar bites. I acquired them Wednesday night after the prayer meeting. And they're so pesky. And if I pay attention to the 13 bites, I'll be miserable. But I tend to ignore that there are various parts in my skin that are not infected by sugar bites. But I have a tendency to curse God. Why? I have 30 sugar bites right now. Because they're the ones that are itchy. So what God is doing here is, where are you? Where's your brother? Angel Gabriel. Where did you come from? Where are you headed? It's initiating a conversation. God wants a conversation with Hagar, with us. And what God is trying to say, you know, your problem is you have forgotten where you were before when I took you. And don't you ever forget where I'm planning to take you. I want for you to take your eyes on what's present, because what's present is merely cooking time. I'm actually forming something in you. But the problem is, you're paying so much attention to the flames that are happening right now. I'd like for you to understand, come on, let's talk. Where did you come from? And where are you headed? Put the framework. That's what the angel was talking about. And so, I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. She answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, I'd like for you to go back. Don't go to Egypt where there is no God. I'd like for you to make a legal U-turn, because that's not the way towards blessing. As a bad dysfunctional family, to be sure, but I'm working on them. And Hagar, make a U-turn. Go back to Sarai, and I promise you blessings. You are with a child, and I'd like for you to name that child Ismael, meaning Kisama Yahweh, the Lord has heard, and I will bless your son. And just return. I'll be with you. And you know what is so fascinating about this story? Hagar, this beautiful young teenager with a dark life, and now offered hope. This is the first time, people, that a person in the Bible gives God a name. How's that? A person gives God a name, and she's a foreign woman. She gave God the name. She gave this name to the Lord, verse 13, who spoke to her, you are the God who sees me. You are the God who sees me when no one cares about me. You are the God who sees me. And she said, because now I see you. And despite to this day, the well, which is the monument called Be'er Lahai Roi, Abraham. So Hagar bore Abraham a son, and Abraham gave the name Ismael. Abraham was 86 when Hagar bore him Israel. For the application, this is where it's most important. The first one being, how deep is your trust in the promises of God? What's problematic here is if you're not familiar with the promises of God. Because what is to trust in if you are not familiar with the promises of God? If I'm going to ask you right now, do you know of at least one or to promise from God, if you can't even cite it accurately, it only means one thing: you have not gone fishing. Because the only way that you can acquire the promises of God is you fish for them. And do you know that there is only one way to fish for the promises of God? It is in the ocean of Scriptures. Only the Bible has solid promises. And when I say solid, it is this. It is a word from the Creator of the universe, who is all-powerful, all-knowing. He makes a statement and then he signs his name. He said, I'm signing my name on this. You can claim it. You know what's the big difference? When God signs his name on a promise, you can camp on it. By the way, please don't give it a time frame. Because sometimes the promise that God gives you will take 10 years. Hopefully not. You know there's a promise. I know of a beautiful woman. Her name is Francie. And she was the pianist in my first year of pastoral work in Manila. And Francie was the pianist. She was a directress for a children's school also. But she was a very delightful woman, faithful and loves the Lord. But Francie was 40, or somewhere around that, when she was the pianist, and she was beautiful. But she determined that she was not going to entertain any intimate social affairs because she felt that it was her calling to take care of her aging parents. And she did that. Boy, how she cared for her parents. Oh, my goodness. She was like always there, chaperoning them wherever they went. Like full-time nurse, like that. It was a sight to behold because of the way she loved her parents. But then, of course, years went by. Every now and then she would come and say, Pastor, there is, however, longing in my heart, like it seemed like I parked an aspect in my life. I long for a lifetime partner, like a husband. But who would care for a 50-year-old woman, 55-year-old woman like me? And I'm well along in years. But then I had this conversation with God that He said that He will provide, but the kingdom of God for me is to take care of my parents first, and that's what I did. And she would come up to me, call me a lot of times from Manila to Dallas, sometimes visit us here in Dallas, and the conversation would be about this, and I found myself just saying this. Don't worry, Francie, if God said it, the man is being prepared. And then she was, Pastor, tagal na yata yung preparation na yan. Pastor, this is really taking time. It's kind of like you think. By the way, Pastor, I'm 55. Tapos 5 years naman nakaraan. Pastor, what do you think about this promise? Francie, I think it's being prepared. Pastor, may I remind you, I'm 60. No, 60 ka na. You're 60. Okay. Okay. I think it's being prepared. And then I would look at people, I kid you not, I would look at the director of PCC. Sino ba dito yung 65 million? I would look at our list and look for a 65-year-old male. I was trying to manipulate things here, but suddenly, not too long ago, the godly Pastor Mike Lacanila lost his wife suddenly. And you know how Pastor Mike loved his wife. But it was so sudden that the pastor was totally in disarray because suddenly there was no helpmate. He's used to having a wife and a very wonderful ministry in Manila. And And suddenly he was some kind in a very lonely space, and the children were kind of like praying and asking for wisdom, and they determined it's time to pray for Dad, that God will provide a replacement, a wonderful wife. And they did. And before I knew it, there was a date set up. I don't know how did that. I did have nothing to do with it. But suddenly, Francie and Mike were in a restaurant in Manila. And the story has it that right into sitting, Pastor Mike looked at Francie. This took 20 minutes. Pastor Mike looked at Francie and he said, "My God, you're beautiful. Will you marry me?" And then Teacher Francie, being conservative that she is, she goes, "Pastor, ang bilis naman yata niya." That's too quick. And the pastor said, "Why? Do you still have time to wait?" Remember my conversation? And then Francis says, "Well, you know I'm 65, Pastor. That's why." Then Pastor Mike goes, "I don't have time to wait, you know. That's why I'm asking this question. Will you marry me?" And Francis said, 20 minutes into that sitting arrangement, Francis said, "Let's do this." My goodness, I just visited them last year like sweethearts, like no wonder. Pastor Mike's beyond 80, and Teacher Francie is about 70, mid-70s, holding hands. And they are just a wonder to look at. The promises of God will be delivered. Sometimes it takes 20 years. But they get done! It's the most important thing, so don't put a time frame. Oh my goodness, can I even go there, right? Yeah, you can. By the way, for some, let me not scare you. For some, it happens in, hey, people, listen, I'm going to balance this thing. Took Teacher Francie, listen, took Teacher Francie like that, more than 2 decades. For me, 1988, 1987, January 1st, 1988, I was weeping before the Lord, and I told him, "Lord, okay, I surrender. I need your help. I think I need the wife." January 1st, 1988. I got married December 15, 1988. To this wonderful woman. So, balance. For some, it's 1 year. For some, 25. Doesn't matter. God is wise. So I don't want to talk about that anymore. The second one is this. God, go wide in accomplishing the purposes of God. Go wide. Don't go myopic on this. Don't concentrate on 2 inches around your life and say, this is safe. I'm already old, so I'm going to play it cool and safe. I don't want to venture in that. My goodness, come on. You were designed for quest, not for adventure. And the quest is this, that you leave home and not to return again. Because your journey is towards the kingdom of God. Don't be safe. Don't be safe from God. Go for maximum joy, whatever God is placing in your heart. Capture it and tell God, "God, I don't know how this is going to happen. I'm barren, but you're telling me that I'm going to have this truth. Go ahead. I'm not going to predict it anymore. I'm not going to reason with you anymore, but this is your will for me. Go ahead. Use this limited life, and I'm willing. Break it open. I'm going to accomplish your purposes, God. I'm going to go wide." Yesterday, I received a text message from my siblings, and they said, wow, especially from NJ, who's a graduate of NYU nursing, my sister. They said, "Kuya, is there anyone in your church who wants to be a doctor?" I said, "What? Because NYU, my school, is offering free tuition fee for medical doctors, those who want to be doctors, because there is a radical depletion of doctors, primary providers. And so, I remember when we were still at the Hotel Renaissance before we moved here. After my sermon, there was a senior lady, an American Caucasian, who went up to me, who's been attending the church, because I think she has some seminars in the hotel. She would just go down and attend the services. Came up to me and said, "Pastor, thank you for the wonderful word today, but this is my last Sunday because I'm moving to medical school," she said. "And I'd like for you to lay hands on me if you would, because this is going to be my first year." And then I get it, she said. "I know, I'm 65, Pastor," she said. "But God called me. I had a serious talk with God, and I had this thing, and I can still think," she said. I think I have the brains to do it. I'm 65, I know, but I want to be a doctor, because God told me that I need to be a doctor in order to do medical missions. So this is my first year in medical school. Would you please lay hands on me?" I said, "My goodness, sure, rock star." And I laid hands on her. I am so dying to meet her. Where is she? Probably somewhere in Egypt, doing medical missions. Already a doctor, I'm sure, with a fire in her heart like that. So go wide in accomplishing the purposes of God. Fill in the blanks, what is in there. Don't go 2 inches of God, because this is the question that God will ask you. He will say, I gave you this opportunity. I gave you that kind of a brain. I gave you that kind of a creativity. I gave you these opportunities. What did you do with it? I was hoping that you would optimize the gifts that I gave you. It's not too late, people. It's not too late. So go wide, fill in the blanks. What is it? Finally, number 3. Go further in declaring the presence of God. He is the God who sees you, right? But then we have responsibility to tell people that now we see God. And how does that look like? By way of your testimonies and your stories. How do you go with this? Any given opportunity that you're given the chance to talk about the presence of God in your life, declare it. As simple as that. When you have birthday celebrations, make it a point that before you ask someone to pray, would you please grab the privilege? They will not say no to you because it's your birthday. Tell them, before we pray, I just want to share a bit of my story on why I'm so blessed to be celebrating this birthday right now. And share your testimony. Grab any and every legitimate opportunity. Don't force it. Don't impose it. If it's not proper, don't do it. But if you see that it's legitimate and you have an opening, go for it and go further in declaring the presence of God. Our very own birthday boy, right here, our maestro, David Dalagit, had a Wednesday concert last prayer meeting because it was his 24th birthday. No, 44 people. Now, you're not yet 75, so you're young. So he declared here that one of the things that he is so sad about, it's because somehow God gave him a vision to start a CD, to contribute a CD with his songs. And you know how prolific he is with songs. And he shared here how sad he is because it's not happened yet. But he has so many songs, but there is not a CD yet. And then I was listening to all this. This is about declaring the presence of God further, because if you have that thing and it's out there, iTunes and Spotify, people can get this. Can you imagine the wide range of declaration of God's presence? And that's the reason why I'm saying this to David. That has to happen. And because I know Darren Sanchez, Darren Sanchez, our intern from TI, who's now back in Baguio City, who used to worship lead here. You see that young gentleman who loves the Lord? Yeah, he's now back in Baguio and still composing songs. He just texted me. I said, praise God, Pastor. Last month, my new song was number 3 on Philippines iTunes. And I checked, it was. And then I checked again 2 weeks ago. His second song was number 7 on iTunes. I said, David, my goodness, we better connect with Darren Sanchez because he knows how to leverage it. I think the CD now is kind of like passe. I think the thing now is MP3 download. Yeah, so it's now the thing, maybe that's the thing. It's easier, but you've got to be snooty about this thing. So we need some great minds. If you know, especially millennials, if you know how to flow this, we need some help on this maestro here. So, it's not only for David Talagin, it's for all of us. So my question is this. You have a story. Your narrative is so special because it's one of a kind. The question is, how far has it been heard? You have to go further in declaring the presence of God. Father, this is a groundbreaking word because it comes from a foreigner, Hagar, the Egyptian handmaid. But Father, her story is our story. Because there are many times in our lives that we are so silently wallowing in despondency and in despair. Because we feel that we have been forgotten. We do not matter anymore. But then we find in scriptures that 65 is not too old, 75 no, 100 not either. Because when you say so, age never matters. The life that you have given us is not even our own. And so every breath we take, everything that goes on in our minds and in our hearts, not even ours, but we were crafted for your glory, fashioned for your design. And so we get this. Would you please teach us to let the Bible run its course? Allow us to mine and fish for your promises every single day and claim it. Not only one, but a boatload of promises. Let it be true for every person in this church that the river of God's promises might flow through profusely. We pray. Someone wants to be a doctor here, and there is a resource problem, or maybe an AIDS problem. Someone wants to be a pastor. Someone wants to be a designer. Someone wants to enter the government office, be a senator. Help us to go wide and not be myopic. Speak to your people. You're the God who sees what is best for us. Let us see what your plans are for us. And then, Father, there is this call for us to go out into all the nations and to tell them the story of God in our lives. The question, Lord, is how far have we gone? Is our story kept safe inside our little closet here in Dallas? And so if that's the case, we ask for your help. Would you please allow us now to venture not in some adventure, but in a major quest let your story be made known through us. Who is pursuing you? I pray that only God